In this episode, I interview Alexis Diamond, who is a content creation specialist. And in this episode, I actually learned a lot about myself and the things that were holding me back from getting in an aligned approach when it comes to creating content. So stay tuned. I'm Adam Kadu, and it's time to master the art of real heart alignment, where you live, work, and play from your personal power as energy aligns, your gifts flow, and life simply works. These life-changing conversations are designed to help you to see what you're not seeing, hear what you're not hearing, and to be who you're not being, as the world needs more heart-centered leaders now more than ever. Are you ready to say no to living a half-hearted life and say yes instead to boldly living from a place of real heart alignment? Welcome to the Adam Kadu podcast. Yo, welcome back to the Adam Kadu podcast. Now, on this podcast episode, I get to interview my friend, one of my students, and somebody who's actually starting to become a mentor of mine when it comes to aligned content creation, and that is Alexis Diamond. Now, Alexis enrolled in my Heart-Centered Selling Mastery program about a year ago, and she actually enrolled in my 6-month coaching intensive as well. And I have seen tremendous growth in Alexis from the standpoint of just, opening up, trusting herself, putting out her message, sharing her heart. And I just see how profound of an impact it's having in her life and in her audience's life as well. And, when it comes to all these new platforms that we've got, Reels and TikTok and, all the different things that are coming up, these micro content pieces, I actually personally was getting a little caught up in it. I was wanting to jump on the train and have some fun because fun is a great value of mine. It's a high value of mine. And I was making it too hard in my mind. And Alexis in this episode walked me through exactly how she approaches content. And also she got into some of the woo-woo of what she does to really clear her energy and set a real solid intention before she creates. And Alexis, over the last, 3, 4, 5 months, she's created more content than I've seen anybody create in such a short amount of time. And she has 3 kids. She just had a baby, 4 months ago or so. She has her business, she has a husband, so she's very busy at home, and she's been able to leverage and to take the time that she has to create so much content. So you're going to love this episode. And without further introduction, I bring you Alexis Diamond. What's going on, Alexis?
Hey, Adam. So happy to be here.
Happy to have you, of course. Alexis is a good friend of mine, a student of mine, and she's actually helped me tremendously with content creation and getting out of my own darn way when it comes to creating more content, and also the preconceived notions that I had about content and how it needs to be structured and certain things like that. I'm a big proponent, a big fan of, alignment, trusting myself, using my intuition, and Alexis has actually helped me tremendously in really going to the next level in trusting myself. So we're going to get into all that and more in this conversation today. But before we get into that, Alexis, just give us a quick little rundown of what you're working on now, what you're helping people with, and what you're excited about.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am currently helping people find alignment in their business, but more specifically in their content creation, right? I am seeing across the platforms, specifically Instagram, but across all the platforms, that this is something people are struggling with. And I know we had talked about this before, about how it kind of feels like people are like launched out, right? Like those big launches, those week-long launches, and when it feels like everybody around you is doing it, and it's not dead, right? But it's kind of losing the draw it used to have. So right now, that content that you put out there is so much more important, because that front-facing content is what is going to get them into your launch compared to everybody else's launch that's happening all at once.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's a big proponent. There's so many different strategies and techniques and processes, and we've got so many different places to create content, but actually having some sort of a tentative plan where you can focus more. And in the same vein, you can box yourself in and be more in flow with creating, all the better, because your content's going to be better. You're going to get more out there, And that is one of the things that we had talked about early on. We were just chatting before we hit the record button here, is where people sometimes have this preconditioning, if you will, where content needs to be a certain way. You know, it needs to be a certain length, it needs to be shorter, it needs to be longer, it needs to be this, it needs to be that. And it really, when we're working from this premise of what the content needs to be, then we're limiting ourselves from really expanding and aligning and channeling the best stuff coming through us, because we're already working from inside the box. And in order to create great content, we must step outside of the box. Can you speak to that a little bit, and maybe even talk about what are the other things that people are kind of goofing up on, and on some of the things? And you said the word conditioning, conditioned to believe their content needs to look like or be.
Yeah, I mean, it happens without us even knowing it happens. It feels like when people start out with content creation, start out in their entrepreneurial journey, everything's just like what's coming to my mind in that moment, and posting, you know, things that you see other people posting. And then as you grow and you keep going in that content creation, all these little rules and these little hacks that you see, you know, Instagram experts and marketing gurus and all these people post, they just start filling your mind without you even realizing it. And then all of a sudden you have all these rules on every single post. There's all this pressure that you put on yourself on every single post, because this has to be the post that gets all this engagement. And if it doesn't, then it was a failure. And, you know, my business is a failure and I don't know how to run things. And it's just this big spiral. And I was talking about it. I actually went on and talked about it in my stories this morning, because before I was a business coach, you know, I was a health coach. And I worked with specifically moms in weight loss. And there are so many parallels between that world and the business world, like this all or nothing mentality, this setting huge plans and huge goals. And when 3 days in, you can't do it anymore, you scrap the plan and you go back to spiraling out. And I see people do the same thing with their content creation. There's people pushing these things where you know, these 30-day challenges where you have to post every day and do all these things, and people put all this pressure on themselves. And then when they don't do it, they disappear for like a month until they commit to something again. And that's keeping people that have important messages that need to get out from gaining that momentum.
Great point. That, you know, yet again, the parallel between health too. There's been times in my life where I, you know, early on years ago, I would do some sort of a crash diet. And then after I was outside that container of the diet, I would basically rebel and, you know, go back to my old ways and eat junk, because I restricted myself so much. So I can see, you know, just being in this container and creating content from this kind of rushed phase, and just doing it because you're inside the container at that standpoint. Then once you're outside the container, it's just like you're not really aligned with that, because you're not always going to have this pressure, this box over you. So you've got to be able to create a framework, a structure, a process that works for you inside your content creation. And that's what you help people with, right? Is helping to figure out what works well for them. So
Yeah.
So tell us real quick about that, and also tell us just inch us into your world, because Alexis literally, like, she has created so much content and reels, and she's just been in this crazy flow, especially the last 3, 4, 5, 6 months. That it's been really cool to see. And her stuff is good. It's on point. You know, it's clever. It's witty. It drives a tremendous amount of value because you learn a lot from them. And she's just going and she's doing it, and, you know, building some great momentum off of this. So tell us a little bit about what you can help people with in terms of their process, and yeah, a little bit about your process too.
Yeah. So the first process, and it's really what a lot of people skip in content creation and business and health and whatever it is clearing out the things that aren't serving you, right? If you have some type of story or some type of rule or some type of standard that somebody put on you about your content and what it should look like and what order it should be in, and it gives you anxiety rather than making you feel empowered and knowledgeable and like it's a tool that you can use, then it's got to go. It's got to go. And people, most people have a hard time letting go of these rules, because if you do it, then it's just you, right? If you let go of everybody else's rules and you let go of what everybody else told you to do, then whatever you put out there is on you. And you have to surrender and fully trust yourself and trust the universe to be able to do that. And I feel like that's something people are taught not to do, right? Their whole lives, they're taught not to do that. That's crazy. Why would you do that? It's never going to work out. And all of that conditioning, it really gets in the way of people showing up authentically online in a way that's going to let other people connect to them.
Gosh, I'm getting chills. It's always a good sign. I love this conversation for numerous reasons. One is because there is a level of following that can help, right? It's like learning from other people, but if you constantly are looking for somebody else for the plan, the playbook, the strategy, and following their plan, it's their plan. It's what's worked for them. You might have a different personality, you might have different beliefs, you might have different values. And so just blindly following what somebody else is doing is not always going to work. It's not always going to be sustainable. And I think that's the question too, is, you know, we can all batch some content here and there, but then we don't show up for a couple months and, you know, is it sustainable? Is what we're doing sustainable? So I love that when you start creating your own process, you start trusting yourself, that gives you the freedom. But for a lot of people, that's scary because they have nobody else to blame. If I follow somebody's TikTok recipe to success and it doesn't work, then I can say their recipe didn't work. It's nothing about me. I don't have to look within. But if I, you know, take some nuggets of gold and you know, whatever I got from that, and I create my own plan, my own process that aligns with me, and it doesn't quite work out to my expectation, one, I can look at the expectations and the attachment to the expectation. We're playing a long game here, you guys, like entrepreneurs, business people, we're playing a long game. So we got the expectation. Also, what does that mean about me if it didn't work out well? You know, and I like to say, you know, nothing has any meaning except for the meaning you give it, but it's not always easy to choose that and to see that in the moment where you put out this piece of content you were excited about. This is going to take off. This is going to go viral. And that got less likes than your average stuff that you're just kind of dabbling around a bit. So I love this. There was something else that came up too, but yeah, talk a little bit about surrender. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
1 second there, because to spin off on something that you said is like, you had brought up the attachment, right? And that's really what's at the root of a lot of people's emotions that they feel about this content that they're putting out. I have a reel. I mean, I'll have reels that I make in 10 minutes that get, you know, 5,000 views. And then I had a reel I put out last week that I was like, oh my gosh, this was so downloaded. It's so divine. Like, this is going to be the one. And I think it got like 30 views, but it got a lot of engagement. And people, like, there's these vanity metrics that we're taught to chase. And I'm not saying not to look at your numbers, because the whole point of the whole foundation of being able to run your business from an aligned place is being able to balance out that creativity, that freedom, that intuition, and the process and the metrics and the planning. But when you look at those metrics with attachment, because you had some expectation that you put on it, it taints everything else that you had. And you, like I said, you know, a lot of people will be like, oh, this is that one post that was so aligned and it's going to go so well. And then it doesn't do as they expected, without realizing that, like you said, it is the long game. When somebody lands on your page and they decide whether or not they're going to follow you and whether or not they want to hear what you have to say, they're not looking at that one post that you made. You're creating a whole story, this whole profile of all the different pieces of what you have to put out there. So
yeah, that's so good. That's so good. So we've got the concept of clearing out, and I dare to say just what came up in the conversation is clearing out attachments. And you even told me at one point, you're like, I'm so detached right now. And I could see that even when you said that, it was like, I'm in my power type of deal. Because if we're creating content for those vanity metrics, if we're creating content because we need business results, it's the scarcity, it's the urgency. I used to work from there for years. And I just got more scarcity. When I was working from scarcity, needing results, this place of neediness, I just got more scarcity and more reasons to be needy in return. But when I started trusting myself and letting go and opening my heart and having the intention of being of service and helping people, focusing on how I want somebody else to feel, focusing on how I can bring joy and lightness to somebody's day, that's when my business started taking off. So we're letting go of stuff. We're getting rid of the expectations of how things should be. We're letting go of the neediness to follow somebody's plan to give them all of our power and not take responsibility for ourselves if there's certain things that don't quite fit with us. So where do we kind of go from here? We cleaned out some stuff. Say for an example, you and I were working together. What would be some of the things that you would help to realize, like, what is my aligned approach to content creation, or what are some of the foundational things that are usually in somebody's plan, if you will?
So intuition is a massive part of what I do and how I work with people. And of course, intuition is a lot of surrender, and people can get caught up in thinking that people can be really into intuition, right? They can be really into the spiritual stuff. They can follow people who they think are super intuitive. And then when it comes down to them, they think that somehow they don't have that same intuitive ability, right? That for some reason, these other people are more intuitive than me and they can do it following their intuition, but I can't. So at the root of that is just being so disconnected, right? Being disconnected from that intuition because there was so much doubt. So there has to be some leaps, because until you get a download, or you get a nudge, you get a hunch, or like you get an idea and you just feel so lit up about it, but like it might not fit in your content plan, like until you do that thing that doesn't make sense and see where it leads, you're not going to be able to trust it. You have to take the first step. And one of the intuitive coaches that I had worked with, one of the best points she ever made is, what you focus on is going to expand. So if you spend time, deliberate time, intentional time to sit there and pay attention to those nudges you get, and pay attention to those synchronicities and write them down and keep track of them and build this relationship with your intuition, because it really is this relationship that you have, then it's going to grow and then it's going to expand. And it's still going to be scary, right? There's still going to be those moments where you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm doing this, or that I'm going to say this or put myself out there like that. But you feel more secure in the fact that there's magic on the other side of that action.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Man, this is so good. So this is actually a great conversation for me where I'm at right now. And you said something earlier about kind of order, and this is cool. I get a chance to see, like, what are still my beliefs around content creation. And there still is this thought that there is some order, that one, piece of content should come before the next. And it's really kind of bogging me down a little bit, to be honest with you. And I usually, if I'm like feeling any sort of block, I'll just kind of document where I'm at. But when it comes to planning things out and being a little bit more intentional and batching content, I feel like there needs to be this sequential component to it. It needs to make sense sequentially. That's how my brain is wired. I'm a sequential thinker. Like, I like to be able to see the process, the steps. And sometimes if I don't have all of those steps, then it's hard for me to get into action. But that's where self-awareness, and it's something you speak on a lot as well, comes into play. Knowing myself to know enough that, hey, look, I don't necessarily have to have every single thing planned out, and I can just get messy with it and get some stuff rolling off the start. But it has helped me tremendously here recently to be very intentional, because I'm a big vision thinker, got a lot of ideas, just very expansive. And so when it comes to getting in the nuances of setting down and planning something out, and even preparing a little bit of a script, I mean, even with the podcast, I literally, like, I'll have an idea, I'll take a few notes, I'll sit down, I'll record. So it's very just like easy, light, and flow. But when it comes to content and something I'm going to put out on, a reel or things like that. I have been getting caught up. And so the more I know myself and know my tendencies, the more I can help myself in that arena. So one of the things I'm doing that's helping tremendously is putting it in my calendar. So I'll have a chunk of time where I'll block it out and I'll say, okay, in this time, we're going to, have an intention. We're going to create, 10 ideas for reels. Then even I like to, I love my freedom. A lot of entrepreneurs listening, we love our freedom. So it's just like, I don't want to box myself in. I don't want to be a robot and say from 2 to 3, you're doing this, and then I do it. But it's helpful when you can be in integrity and follow through. Even having that on my calendar, it still takes me setting a timer to focus a little bit because my mind wants to go elsewhere. And if I put that timer on, it just has the enough of an edge without really kind of boxing me into where my creative side isn't there. It has just enough of an edge of a container to allow me to focus to map things out. So yet again, tell us a little bit, just let us see behind the scenes, if you would, of how your process looks. And I know we had a conversation around this at one point. So yeah, clue us in a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, as you were talking, that's actually exactly what came up for me, because I don't necessarily have a time slot specifically that I use for content because of my 3-month-old. Yep. he's like, your time slots can like bite me, right? He's like, I don't want any part of that.
That's your timer. Yeah.
Yeah, he is my timer. But there will be a specific day or a specific half of a day where I know I'm going to be creating content. So as we were talking earlier, it's the clearing and it's the connecting and then the creating. So with the clearing, I always clear my space first. I always clear my space. I use my sage. I use my selenite crystal. I'll clear my space. I'll clear me. I'll do breath work. And it sounds like a lot, right? But it's like maybe 10 minutes of stuff here, right? I'm just saging myself. I'm using my selenite. I will do like 5 minutes at the most of a clearing breath work just to get me in a state where I'm able to receive, right? And then from there, I will be really intentional about connecting to my intuition, which I refer to my intuition more as like a team, right? It can be, universe, God, whatever you want to call it. But for me, it's a team. So I invite my team of people in, I feel them surround me, and then I connect.
Is these like past relatives or other beings that, just kind of,
so your team, everybody's team is going to be different, right? And I love my team mostly because it's made up of like the most random collection of beings that you could ever think of. Like I have, this Native American man, I don't know, ancestor, ascended master, I don't know, but he's there and he protects me, right? I have my higher self. I have, I have one woman, and I don't know who she is or where she came from or what it is, but she comes in when I need to get more in touch with my heart center, right? Because every time she comes in, I feel like pulsating there. And I know we're getting really into the woo now, but that is who it is for me. And I know they're here because I feel them behind my shoulders.
Wow.
Right.
I love this.
So
I'm getting chills. And this is, oh God, it's always, yet again, it's always a good thing when I get chills. It's like just it's at the most beautiful times. And for me, chills equals truth. So I feel this, I sense this. And just to ground this a little bit, the book Think and Grow Rich, we've all probably heard of that book as entrepreneurs. Napoleon Hill is the author. He's legendary for talking about these masterminds that he has for him in his mind, right? But he was able to access different information and insights and see certain things because he put himself in the presence of others who have came and gone or no longer on this planet. And so he attributes a lot of his success and a lot of his outside the box, his expansive thinking to these masterminds. So if you will, just to kind of ground this a little bit, this is kind of, if you will, the same concept as having, figures or energy connections around you to ground you a bit and to know you're supported. And so, yes, definitely a woo conversation, but it doesn't need to be that. I mean, because it's the same concept. And That's beautiful. So I'm definitely going to utilize that a little bit more. Thank you for going there and sharing that. I appreciate that. That's beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I open up to them. I connect to the earth because that's big for me. My moon sign is Capricorn, right? I'm a Sagittarius, which is all fire. So, that comes out very easily.
Yeah.
But the other side, right?
I wanted to speak to that really quick too, because Alexis and I have been kind of working together, maybe a year or so now. And when I first saw her, I was like, there was something magnetic about her. And I know that, even myself 2 years ago, had insecurities. I could just tell there was some insecurities going on. And even your energy back then was just a little wiry and kind of just like way fast paced and all this stuff. And I got on the call today and like your energy helped me to ground even. And I was just like, this is so beautiful. Like she's doing the work that she's teaching others. She's honoring this work. And I'm getting a little emotional just saying that because it's been such a cool process to see your transformation. And I want to acknowledge you for that, because it's sometimes hard for us to see our own transformation. So, but your energy is just like so settled and grounded. And this is exactly what you're speaking to, in creating content, is being grounded instead of creating content from this frantic place of, I need to do this, or I need to get this out, and I need to do better at reels. I need to get this. And, I'm missing an opportunity here, and all this stuff, all this sense of urgency, not from a standpoint of the urge to help people, but for the urge of, working from lack or scarcity or missing opportunity. Yeah. So I love this. This is huge. I mean, you're sharing your secret sauce here of how you've been able to create so much, and I see it. So this is cool. I'm geeking out a bit. So, okay.
and it really does go back to the surrender, right? It all goes back to the surrender, because there's this narrative going on around Instagram right now, specifically about the reels. And I'm seeing it in a ton of content creators. They're putting out content that's like, oh, if you want to go viral, here is how you find a trending sound before 5,000 people have had it, and you have to use it before that, and then people will see you, and then you'll blow up. And you can feel, while they're giving you the message, like this anxiety come over you, like, oh my gosh, am I doing that? Like, I'm finding trending songs, but is it fast enough? Like, all of this stuff. And in the end, it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter, because if you're being intentional and if you're being divinely guided in whatever way you feel guided, then it's going to work out. The people who need to hear what you have to say are going to hear it. And I'll even tell my light team, like I told them before I got on this call, I was like, I'm open to you letting any information flow to me that's going to hit the people who need to hear it. And that can be 10 people, or it can be 10,000 people, but it doesn't matter as long as it's hitting the people that it was meant for. And that's that surrender, right? It's that trust. It's that knowing that when you take the action, something good is going to come of it.
Oh man, you're blowing me away with this. So I've been geeking out on, kind of the content or concept of micro content, if you will. Just looking at reels a little bit closer, just looking at TikTok a little bit closer. I love the psychology behind marketing. So I'm just geeking out on that a little bit. And I did take a training. I won't mention this person's name, but, and they were teaching about like, daily, posts and things of that nature. And for me, I'm like, I don't see myself doing that. But I could just tell this person was straight up like on the edge of burnout. You could see it on her face. I could see it in her energy. And I was like, she's good at teaching stuff. She's got some good stuff. She had an advanced program. There's like $1,000 or so. And I was like, I just don't connect with her energy. Like, I just don't connect. I don't connect with it. Like, I loved how she structured her information. She's very smart, very intelligent, but it was just like, she's burning out, right? She's basically forcing herself inside of somebody else's algorithm, in order for her interpretation of success. And I was just like, I just don't align with it. And so for you, it's just like, yet again, the detachment, the playing the long game, the staying in your peace, the routine that you're taking yourself through. And I don't see an ounce of burnout on you. And you've probably created as much content in a short amount of time as this gal had, or more. So yet again, that's just a testament to the work you're doing. So
yeah. Well, part of, and up till now, you know, a lot of the conversation has been really, you know, not wooey, but like, you know, the intangible stuff, right? The energy working stuff. And that's beautiful and that's great. And it's absolutely necessary. But my journey to becoming a person that can help people the way that I am was in consolidating the two sides of that coin, right? The woo-woo and the spiritual and all that with the marketing strategy.
Yep.
And with being intentional, like playing the game for the goal that you have. You know, it's crazy because this last launch that I did, I could feel it. I could feel myself getting a little bit attached to stuff. And, you know, I've been so detached for so long that it was so obvious to me that it was happening. And one of the things that you said, because there's just these little things that you say that just like play in my head when I need them. And it was like, you know, your goal is just the level of game that you're playing. Right. And it just like that helps me detach from things so much because it really is. It really is. And then, you know, it lets you play with more of like this curiosity, right? Trying things out and seeing what works. And as far as it comes to, you know, creating a bunch of content, I have 3 kids, one that only goes to school 12 hours a week and one that's 3 months old. I do work for other people, you know, I do contracting work for people. I have a household to maintain. So I don't have 90 minutes a day to spend on some post. So it's not just that I'm, you know, channeling this stuff to connect to people. I'm channeling it because 1, I'm putting out authentic content in a very short period of time. And 2, then I lean into that processes and fun and like, you know, system side of myself and go back to the content I created and just go, okay, how can I tweak this a little bit and see if that works? And then like, what can I pull from this post to revamp it, to do this and see if that works? And you can only do that if you stay in that detached state. Because if not, you're constantly going to be worrying about what if this post doesn't work?
And also, this conversation can go so deep. Also, there's an attachment, and you and I had talked about this before we hit the record button here, was an attachment to feeling like each and every piece of content you create needs to be something brand new, completely different, completely unique from anything you've said in the past. And you wonder why people aren't able to really carve out their own market where people know what they're about, know what they're doing, and they're always pivoting or evolving. It's because they feel like they need to continue to change their content or say something completely different. And I've been taught something completely different is actually you want to repeat yourself. You want people to hear the same message in different ways and share the same message in the same ways sometimes. So it's actually beneficial. It saves you a lot of time and it brands you as a certain type of person in the industry where people know what you do. They know what you're about. They know what you're up to. That's huge. You know, that's huge to be able to be recognized. And in doing so, in saving yourself time and, you know, not going back to the drawing board each and every time for your post, that's huge. So that's also something you help your people with is just looking at opportunities to work smarter, I guess. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Efficiency is the word here.
Efficiency,
it is
absolutely.
the word through and through. And that's just always been like a natural gift of mine to see the most efficient way to do things. So taking that plus the fact that I've always been a little bit aware of my intuition, right? I've kind of lived this life where if you look back on it, you're like, wow, you made some weird choices. Like you really jumped off the lake and waited, like you really trusted the net was going to appear there. And I did, and I have. So I have this story that everything is going to work out, right? Everything is always going to work out. And it's going to be fine because, you know, to go from the environment that I was raised in to the life that I'm living right now, so many things just had to work out.
Yeah.
So because of that, I have this belief and it allows me to have like this freedom in my life, right? This freedom to really trust myself and trust my intuition and trust the universe. And to circle back to something you said about how people feel like they always have to like create new content and like, you know, build something from the ground up again and recreate the wheel. Part of that is, you know, just a false belief. But another part of it, and it depends on who you're talking about, is they're not aligned with that message they put out in the first place. Because if none of the content that you're putting out aligns with you, you are constantly going to feel like you need to change, because it's like you're throwing darts at a dartboard, like trying to hit that middle, and you just can't. And it's because, again, a lot of people neglect the clearing and the connecting before the creating. They're just hopping right into that creation.
Wow. Yeah, that makes sense. And I was going to ask you the question too. It's just like, how do we start to step into more alignment? Is it the throwing stuff at the wall, but it's actually looking at, like you said, it's step number one to clear out. So if there's some topics or angles, I mean, for myself, I started early on in online entrepreneurship space of helping people to create clarity in their life. And it quickly became something I was just like, I don't want to talk about productivity. I don't want to talk about, meditation and stuff like that, even though I do still, still comes up. And I quickly kind of realized is like, that doesn't light me up. It doesn't fire me up. So it's just like, I let go of that. I cleared that out and I can see that now. So is that kind of on the same vein that you're seeing? It's just like, yes, action helps create clarity, but it's actually being intentional and looking at what you want to let go of and what no longer serves you. And also, and I'm going to slow down for the listeners with this. Sorry, I heard the little man. There's times in our lives to where we use things as a crutch. So that content, that topic that you might have been known for before, and actually Alexis and I had this conversation, maybe you could speak to this as well, is becoming a crutch. It was your safety net. It's what you've kind of carved out, what you're known for. But if you feel called and more aligned with stepping into something else, there's going to become a time in a point in time where it's time to let go of that. It's time to transition and move on. So let's speak to that real quick. Just speak that if other people, which I know they are feeling that conversation and they are using something as a crutch. And this is what I've, been known for. And I know, a mentor of mine, James Wedmore, he was the video guy. And he did this business podcast, and there was a lot of woo woo and everything. And he took a big leap out of getting out of this persona as just the video guy, the YouTube video guy. And he, his business took off since then when he let go of that. So yeah, let's jam on that for a minute. What do you got for us?
Yeah, for sure. Oh my gosh, there's so much there for me specifically, because when I started in the online space, like I said, I was a weight loss coach, and I had a marketing coach that had me put myself feel like you have to niche and then niche and then niche and then niche again. And then niche again, right? So I was in so many boxes and creating everything from all these boxes, plus all of this is the way you have to do everything. I mean, there was so much and this was just a year ago, right? That I had all this conditioning, where I still couldn't see my way out. And I knew it was November when I was on a TCP call, and I felt it in my whole body. I was like, I'm doing the wrong thing, right? I'm great at it. I know everything about it. I mean, my first business was a brick and mortar fitness studio, right? Oh, wow. When I was 25, I opened a fitness studio, and that was what started my entire entrepreneurial journey. And, so it's like, I have experience and testimonials and clients and all this stuff. So I kept trying to kind of pivot, right? I'd be like, okay, well, what if I just take out this component, but keep that? So I was like, okay, I'll go from weight loss to just working with moms with hormones. And then I went to create that content, and it was icky and it was sticky and it didn't feel right? I'd create content for a week and then be like, I can't do this anymore. I need to pivot. So then I was like, okay, maybe I'll work with entrepreneurial women and their hormones. And it wasn't until a conversation that we had where that was still where I was, right? I was still in health coaching, and I was re-listening to the conversation, and you were like, had you ever thought about working with entrepreneurs? And I had in my mind that I was going to be a business coach from the moment I got onto the online space. I just thought that I had to build like this 7-8 figure business before I could put myself out there and help people, instead of accepting that this is a natural gift that I have. I mean, I was in a $10,000 marketing program, and there were people in that program that were DMing me to help them instead of the coaches. And I was like, I can do this. It's just, again, taking that leap of faith. So then even when I did that, right? Even when I did that, I was a self-trust business coach, right? I was like, okay, I'm going to teach you, subconscious stuff and all this stuff that I'm comfortable with. And even that was still putting me in a little bit of a box. And it wasn't until I was like, I'm going to create what feels right to me and be intentional and observe it and see where it goes, that I got to where I'm going right now. And I even feel like I'm still going even further into like the spiritual side of stuff, because the more that I work with people on their content, on their intuition, and the more that I expand in my intuition, the more gifts that I'm realizing I have. So I know from past experience, if I push that off, right? If I ignore that nudge, if I don't create that content and let it turn into what it's going to turn into, eventually I'm going to have to do it later. I'm just going to be further behind, It's always going to come to a head. That thing that we're pushing off, that thing that we don't want to accept, we're always going to have to choose either to quit or to give into it.
Wow. Yeah. Because it's not going away.
It's not going away.
Kind of like the parable of, something's trying to get your attention. It's going to throw little pebbles, then little rocks. And then those rocks are going to turn into bigger rocks until they become boulders, and it's going to get your attention and you're going to shift one way or the other. But yeah, it's just perking up to waking up. You're going
to do it now or later.
Yeah. So, and it is. And yet again, and I mean, this is so cool because that's where I started as well. I was so confused about online business and all the advice I was getting, and, niche down, and, and it just never felt like I was in my home when I was niching down, because I'm expansive. You can't really box that in. I mean, I want to speak specifically to people, but the whole idea with the niche just perplexed me a bit. But and so it was like cleaning my environment, letting go of certain things, like clearing the clutter out of my mind, of getting distractions out of the way. So there is this huge clearing process. So I love that that's a part of the creation work, because I see that. And also it's an opportunity for me to see how I can incorporate what you're sharing here to make sure that I'm clearing even more out, because in that clearing, space hates a vacuum. We've heard it before. And in that clearing, there is the law where it's something wants to fill that void. So that's when new ideas, new inspiration comes in. But if you're so full and you're fixed and needs to be a certain way, and you're not really growing, and you're seeing a lot of resistance, and you're kind of dying inside your message, it's time to clear things out and to let go, and to see what comes in from there. So beautiful. Okay, well let's go that extra step, that third step, to just talk about briefly. Yet again, we want to have this conversation from a standpoint of, this isn't the end all be all way to do certain things. This is for inspiration, for how to figure out what works well for you. But talk about the creation a little bit when it comes to reels, and let's get into some of the technical stuff. It's like you do a brain dump and pick some things out, and then you just record, or what's that look like?
So for me specifically, for reels, and even for the other content I create, we all have times where we get these inspired ideas, right? And they're always the most inconvenient times, right? It can't be when we're sitting here ready to type, ready to put it out, that just all these inspired ideas come flowing to us. For me, it's when I lay down to go to bed. When I lay down and go to bed for like a solid hour, and I'll see it in my head. Like I'll see myself doing the live. I'll see myself doing the reel, and I'll be like, oh my gosh, this is pure gold. And then the next morning I'm like, I don't remember 1 second.
Oh my gosh. I thought only I did that. That's crazy.
Right. So it was a lot of me having to choose to do the inconvenient thing and write down the thoughts that I'm having and write down things in that inspired moment. And I have voice notes on my phone. I have sticky notes all over my house. I mean, it's not the most organized way to track downloads, but it works for me. And everybody's going to have different ways that works for them. So once I have that, it's just like inspiration, right? And then I do my clearing and I do the connecting and I sit down, I'll look at the list and see what speaks to me, right? Like,
okay,
what's there that I feel like I can get in touch with right now. And just create from there. And as far as batching goes, my batching is a lot of repurposing. So when it comes to written content, graphic content, stuff like that, it goes back to what I was talking about the tweaking and the revamping and what I call, the Frankensteining, which is basically taking pieces of what you've written before and putting it all together. And I've noticed that for people who like to be intentional on how authentic they are and how inspired things are and like in the moment and stuff like that, they're like, I don't want to batch, right? I don't want to Frankenstein and pull pieces from that. But that's content you created in inspiration, right? Just because it's not the inspiration you had today, that doesn't mean it's not inspired content, right? We put ourselves on these timelines all the time when, I mean, what is time, right? Which is a whole other conversation. But it's not, it doesn't lose anything because you were in an inspired place when you created that. So that's how I do a lot of the written stuff.
Well, now, hold on. That's okay. That's good. Oh, that's so good. That's so good. I'm going to sit with that for a quick second because it started from inspiration. And even if you weren't feeling that same inspiration when you created it or went through it, it still came from that spark of inspiration. So it is inspiration. So that's another conversation of attachment. We're attached to what it looks like and what it's supposed to feel like when we're creating a certain thing. And yes, we want our energy right. But I'd dare to say in this, okay, so this is where I seem to goof up a bit. And, Alexis, she does some work for me and she even sent me some ideas and, I took some notes and certain things. And then it was just like, time passed and I wasn't close to that idea as much anymore. So I didn't follow up on it because there's new ideas coming in all the time, new inspirations. But when your inspiration comes in and you don't end up honoring it, what does that tell you? And, where you got that inspiration and, and what does that tell yourself about yourself? So I dare to say it's kind of a disservice to where you get that inspiration. We won't get into that topic. And yourself, if you're not following up on those inspired ideas. So that kind of puts a new perspective for me personally to be able to honor those downloads, those things that come through and actually get them out into the world. So I had to kind of take that to collaborate that for myself because that's huge. And I'll be the first one to say too, it's just like, I do get a little bit into perfectionism about this stuff. So I want to speak to those perfectionists a little bit, and allowing it to be Frankenstein and messy a little bit more. But, and there is certain things, and I want to slow down for the listeners. I want you to think about what happens, what goes through your mind when you think about creating content, right? There's going to be a point in time if you're not creating content, but you're constantly thinking about it. There's going to be a point in time in, let's just say you're a sequential thinker like me. You get to step 1, I can do it. Step 2, I can do it. Step 3, oh, I don't know. That's going to be kind of hard. And we stop. And so when we can start to see that in ourselves and see that we're stopping at a certain point or getting into perfectionism, even, and I'll tattle on myself, like this is how in depth it has been for me, is even like the pointing at things. I'm like, what if I create that stupid pointing video and then I have 4 points, but I actually have 5 points that I want to cover, right? It's just like, you're not going to die if you knock 1 point off. Come on. It's not life or death type of thing, but literally like I've thought about that before and my mind has stopped me there. And so it's just these little fear things and, a story of mine that continues to show up that I am slaying that dragon. I'm taming the dragon is I don't want to waste time. What if I do all these videos and batch all these videos out and I waste time? So let's speak to the perfectionism perfectionists in some of us, and kind of get that on the table. Yeah.
Yeah. So as you were speaking, it was that relationship with time that really came out to me, because that was me for so long. Because, I had my oldest when I was 23, so I'm 31 now. So, for me, it was always time is a limited resource, right? Like I said, it's all about like, everything has to matter. Everything has to count. I can't waste time. Wasting time was one of like gnaw at my soul, right? It would bother me so much. And what I've learned here is almost like what I said earlier. If you don't spend the time on it now, you're going to waste time not doing it. Right? Like it's the time is going to get spent regardless. And just because you created something and, whatever, I mean, I have drafts from reels that I created that I've never used, but that doesn't mean that it didn't serve a purpose in what I was doing. I wholeheartedly believe it still served a purpose. And it goes to that whole, surrender thing. Even, and, they say how you do one thing is how you do everything, right? So I don't always agree with that. I have a few examples in my life where I'm like, oh, maybe not necessarily, right? However, there was a big move my family made this year, and it all came from an intuitive hit that I got. And now some things aren't turning out exactly the way that we thought they would, right? Some things are like kind of up in the air. And instead of being like, oh no, we made the wrong decision, we shouldn't have been here, I'm working from a state of so many things had to work out so perfectly for this move to happen, for us to get here and be where we are right now, that maybe it's not going to be exactly what we thought it's going to be, but it's going to be better. And it's still what we're meant to do. So it's kind of the same thing with that time. If you're spending it taking aligned action, is not wasted.
Absolutely. And this makes me think too of my early days of content creation, if you will. The very first video I put out, it wasn't like I had thought about it in my mind. And like you said, Alexis, I love that. I would sit in bed at night and I'm like, gosh, that was good. Like, can I just do that on video? Like people would just like love it and eat it up. It's just so tight and so perfect. But it never came across that way. So it was the attachment to how I wanted things to look that caused me a lot of frustration and pain off the start. And I love this because who's to say that's not exactly how it's supposed to be. And I actually, my very first video that I published on my Facebook profile, I think in 2014, I referenced that when I'm in my launches and, just with different clients that I have, just to show them the amount of resistance and fear that I was navigating through at that time. So of course that video served a huge purpose, even though it was like, I look at that video now, I'm like, I was stuttering, I was a mess and I had no idea what I was doing and all that stuff, but it served a purpose. So the content, that reel that we put out, the blog post or the video we put out, whatever, if we're attached to this idea that this has got to work for business and, I don't want to spin my wheels and waste time and create this video and not have it work, or, something happened and, now people are going on a new platform and I spend it all this time on Reels or TikTok or whatever, doesn't matter because it's building towards something even bigger. So great parallel there. I love that. That makes a tremendous amount of sense. And I trust that the listeners are catching that too. Just do it. It's the act of doing it, regardless of the result, is building so much character in you, and it's building so much goodwill. And it makes me think too, there's people who have, ran across videos or posts of mine from a long time ago that they reach out and they're like, I really connected with this. And I'm like, awesome. That was like years ago. Right. Yeah. And so that one message that they stumbled across or found or whatever really hit home to them, and they saw me in a different light because of that. And it helped establish a business relationship and all that. So there's always that opportunity and capability for that. So beautiful. So how do we round this conversation out? What else do we got here? So we're clearing out, we're connecting with ourselves and our higher energy, our guides, if you will, connecting with the mastermind, if you will. And then we're creating. So it's just like, yes, pay attention to the nudges you get, take notes, because you know how that goes. I just saw a meme about that online the other day. It's just like this person with this blank look on their face is like, I promised myself I'd remember that in the morning or something like that. Like, no, I don't. So yeah, take notes, leave yourself a breadcrumb a trail, and start looking at your own system from a standpoint of what works for you. Is it putting it in a notebook app? Is it actually having a physical notebook? Are you going to go through and star some that you feel called to star? Like, really start to get into the sequence of things. And also there, at the end of the day, there's going to be a point in time where you record. So, just real quick, just to round this out completely, when it comes to, you got your ideas, you got your inspiration, what at that standpoint, you kind of go back to the clearing and the connecting and before you create, and what's it look like to take a concept or an idea and actually to record it or to put it into form, if you will?
Yeah, so that's going to be different depending on whether you're referring to written or video content. However, I am a huge proponent of people like to consume content in different ways, right? There are going to be people who see that long caption and they are going to read every single word, love it. And then there's going to be people that are going to be like, absolutely not. Like, I read that first sentence and that's as much as you're going to get from me. Then there's going to be those people who swipe through the carousels, who just love doing that and love, the different graphics and the visuals of it. Who, maybe don't want to sit there and, watch like a live video or something like that. And then there's going to be the people like me who love the reels, right? They're going to land on your page and they're going to binge your reels. So no idea, no piece of content that you create is going to stop there. So look at the idea and be like, okay, what medium do I want to use? Do I want to make this a carousel? Do I want to make this a long form post? Do I want to make this a video? Just whatever the path of least resistance is, whatever feels good in that moment, you create that. And then you look back at it and say, okay, I created this. Now, how do I use this inspired, beautiful thing that I put out and created and make 3 or 4 different types of content from that? So, and that's what, one of my clients that I just, went over her Instagram page, she has these beautiful carousels where she has these long captions on them and they get so much engagement and people are loving what she has. But each post is just, again, rebuilding the wheel, right? Building things from the ground up over again, instead of just being like, okay, I have this long caption, now I can put it on a single image.
Wow.
Right? Or taking that long caption and turning it into a carousel. Or part of what I've been doing lately is, because I can be really in the moment sometimes with video stuff, reels that I create, I send them to my VA and I tell them, you turn this into a carousel. Like, just take what I wrote, like what I said verbatim here, and turn it into a carousel. And that really, it makes your page more diverse, right? It attracts all different types of people who, consume content differently, but it also gives you that momentum without sucking up all your time. So when I create, I might create 2 big pieces of content. And then everything else is just me using that content to create more content, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I love it. And I love, yet again, seeing just how you process and look at things, and even the little tip of, seeing, where do you want to take this thing? You have this idea, like what context or what medium or what style, if it's a carousel or a longer post or a reel or a live video, whatever, is going to help tremendously, because then you're going to kind of have a better idea of like where you're expanding into that, right? If you got 15 seconds, then that's going to be a different conversation than a live or something or a carousel or whatever. So this is beautiful. So and I would dare to say that there's so much more in the nuances of this in between, and that's what you help people with. So if you are somebody that's looking to take your content to the next level, pay close attention to Alexis, go to her Instagram profile, which we'll share the handle in a second. We'll put it in the show notes, to just see how she's creating, to see how she's doing things, and also, reach out and connect. And there might be an opportunity to work with her and, have her as your business coach and your aligned content creation coach. So this is beautiful, Alexis. I've learned a tremendous amount from you. We've spent a lot of time together. And even in this episode here, I've learned a tremendous amount more. So there's so much more, but
so
we will
much more.
Yeah, I know there is. There's so many little nuances. I was like, oh, we should go here. I don't know. That would just open up a new can of worms there. But yeah, so thank you so much for being on this episode with us and for sharing the goods. And there's so much more to come out of you. And yet again, I want to acknowledge you for your growth and, your transformation and being able to, like you said, you're walking your talk, to surrender and to let go and to step into the person that you are. And it's been very cool to see you blossom in that way. And I look forward to seeing what is ahead with you. So let us know how we can catch up with you on socials and anything else that you've got going on. You got any promotions or anything else? Yeah, just fill us in.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am on mainly Instagram right now. That's where I'm focusing most of my energy, at Audaciously Aligned.
Mm-hmm.
And I am about to present, I'm about to open the doors to align content creation. So right now, if you want to get word of that first, because there is going to be a limited number of spaces, because like I said, limited time, limited spaces.
Yeah.
So there is going to be a limited number of spaces. So if you want to hear about it first, there is a link on my Instagram page, Audaciously Aligned, to go ahead and opt into the wait list. And then you can be the first to hear about the special discounted prices that I'm going to be giving out. So
very cool.
I'm super excited. I am so excited about, this program and where it's going to go. And it's such a divinely created thing that, again, like I said earlier, like I just know that there's magic on the other side of this.
Yeah.
So
Beautiful. Well, thank you.
And thank you. Well, thank you for having me. And then on top of that, like this whole past year through this whole journey, like I have been with you through this whole thing, like all the coaching and stuff. It's really helped me step into what I was supposed to be doing. So I'm super grateful for that.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And you show up, you do the work, and that's all we can do. And now you're, oh man, I'm getting on that wait list, so I'm gonna beat everybody to it. So let me know when that comes out, and because it's the container, it's the support too. I mean, we gave the listeners here a tremendous process to go through, and there's still just little areas where myself included, you kind of just get caught in the cracks a bit. But being inside a container and having a coach like you to be there and to hold their hands when they need to hold their hands, or to give them the push off the cliff when they need the push off the cliff so they can fly. That's huge. That's absolutely huge. So I look forward to, hearing more about the people that you attract into that program. So
great.
All right. Well, thank you. And yeah, go follow Alexis on Instagram and, join in on all the fun. She's a joy to watch and, up to big things. So appreciate you being here. Much love to you. And until next time, you guys, thank you. Until next time, go help somebody. Lead with love, trust yourself, surrender, like Alexis said, and go help somebody. So we'll talk to you soon. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Adam Kadu podcast. If you would take a moment to subscribe and click the bell icon so that way you get notified when future episodes air. Now here's the thing. If you are looking for the show notes, you can find a link to those below. If you're looking for the handles of the guests that I've been interviewing, things of that nature, you'll find that here. And if there's anything else that stood out to you in the episode, or if there's anything I can do for you, please leave a comment below, or for sure message me on Instagram if you'd like, as I'm always looking to hear what's working well for you and what caught your interest about the Adam Kadu podcast. So, time to go, time to change the world, time to help more people. Are you ready? Let's go do this thing. The world needs more leaders. So thanks again for listening to the Adam Kadu podcast.